Welcome to Politics and More. I'm Jeff Rowan. It's March 18th, and let's call today political potpourri. There's a hodgepodge of things I'd like to talk about today. Let's start with the prospects for a budget deal. As I watched the Sunday talk shows yesterday, it became increasingly clear to me that the prospect of a budget deal is slim to none. And it's slim to none for several reasons. First of all, as we all know, the Republicans are loath to allow any new tax revenues, whether it's stopping unnecessary subsidies to oil companies or trimming the farm subsidy or stopping rewarding the companies for taking profits overseas. They don't want any of that. But that's only part of the reason why we're not going to get a budget deal. I think a more fundamental reason is the Republicans feel that they have all the leverage at this point. And the reason that they have the leverage over the president is because, unlike the president, the Republicans don't care whether the economy improves or not. That's right. I believe that the Republicans don't care. The Republicans have gone from, in the first term, sort of rooting against success of the president to, in the second term, sort of actively attempting to bring about a lack of success on the part of the president. Think about it for a moment. If your political party is mired in the polls at 24% approval rating, and by the way, the Republican National Committee just yesterday released their autopsy of the 2012 election, where they went to focus groups and talked to people and asked them, why didn't you vote for us? And they heard words like scary, narrow-minded, stuffy old men. When you have that profile in the public, when your brand is that damaged, you either have to change what you're offering the constituents, or you have to find some other way to become competitive. And I believe that the Republicans have reached the strategy of, we can't really improve our standing with the American people, so let's see if we can lower the president's standing. If we simply create perpetual dysfunction, perpetual gridlock, and a complete absence of getting the people's business done, we can manage to lower the president's brand and narrow the gap between us and the president. No, we're not going to increase our own standing, but let's see if we can hurt him. I think that's the strategy right now. And in saying this, I have to admit that I was wrong. When the president was asked, what's going to be different in your second term, he predicted that, in his words, the fever would break. That is, now that he no longer had a new term to run for, there wasn't going to be a third Obama term. He predicted that the Republicans would be less concerned about undermining him and more concerned about governing. I thought that was going to happen too. I thought that the era of obstruction, since it hadn't worked in the first term, was going to be dropped by the Republicans, and they would become at least somewhat cooperative with the president. Both of us were dead wrong. So given that, it's very difficult for me to conceive of a way that there's going to be a meeting of the minds between the Republican caucus and the president. Second issue I'd like to talk about today is Senator Rob Portman of Ohio, who's gotten a great deal of praise in the last week for switching his position on marriage equality. In case you haven't heard, Portman's son, a student at Yale, came out to his family, and that caused soul searching on the part of the father. And now Rob Portman has switched his position, and as he put it, wants his son to partake of the same joyous marital institution that the father, Senior Portman, has participated in for 26 years. So he now supports the right of gays and lesbians to marry. Now, that's a good thing, but you're not going to hear me heaping praise on Senator Portman. I mean, first of all, I tend to praise people, I tend to credit people for taking principled positions that don't necessarily serve their own self-interest. I like somebody who says, it doesn't affect me or it's not going to help me, but I want to take a position that's going to help group X, group Y, group Z. When somebody switches their position simply because it's going to help their own family in some way, it's hard for me to give the person the same amount of praise that I would somebody who had taken a more principled position. I mean, does anybody really believe, for example, that Dick Cheney would be a supporter of marriage equality if he didn't have a daughter who was lesbian? Of course not. He'd be among the greatest gay bashers in the land. A second reason why I'm not heaping praise on Rob Portman is that if I understand the chronology correctly, his son came out to him in the year 2011. We're now in 2013. So think of it for a moment. The father waited 2 years. He had an election where he ran for the Senate of Ohio. He was considering a run for the presidency over that 2-year period, and he was high on Romney's list of vice presidential candidates during that 2-year window. At no point during that time did he express any support for marriage equality. Only after all those critical choice points in his life were over with did he come out. Took the father 2 years after his son acknowledged to the family that he was gay. To me, this is not a profile in courage. It's better than the alternative, but let's not go crazy about it. There are some profiles in courage among the Republicans. A large number of Republicans just signed an amicus brief, a friend of the court brief, to the Supreme Court supporting the right of gays in California to marry. Among them were ex-governor of Pennsylvania and ex-Homeland Security Chief Tom Ridge, ex-governor John Huntsman of Utah, ex-governor of Massachusetts William Weld. Quite a few moderate Republicans signed that brief. That's a good thing. I praise those people. I'm quite prepared to give credit where credit is due. Finally, I'm going to depart from my tendency to criticize the Republicans and say something sort of nice. While listening to some of the CPAC speeches over the past week, I heard something extraordinary. It was the first time in her public life that Sarah Palin has ever made me laugh. Yes, I'm absolutely serious. In the middle of her speech, and talking about gun rights, gun control, Second Amendment, she told a story. Let me repeat the story in case you haven't heard it. She said, this past Christmas, husband Todd, you all remember Todd, husband Todd had given her a metal gun rack to put in the back of her four-wheel vehicle. And that meant, of course, that she had to get Todd something to put in the gun rack. So she went out and bought him a set of rifles for the gun rack to complete it. And Sarah concluded that this year, he's got the rifles, I've got the rack. Actually brought the audience at CPAC to their feet. It's probably the most compelling thing she said in her 26-minute speech. Sarah Palin made me laugh. I'm Jeff Rowan. I'll see you next time.